Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Artist First World Radio Network, home of the best new music you've never heard, and home of the best new talk shows you need to hear. Please don't forget to visit our archives page at www.artistfirst.com, where you can hear all our past shows for free and on demand. You are tuning into High School Football America. This show airs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For more information about this show and to listen to past shows, please visit the archive page at www.artistfirst.com/jefffisher.htm. And now here's your host of High School Football America, Jeff Fisher.
Thank you very much, Corey, and good evening, high school football fans. High School Football America on the road tonight in Times Square in New York City. Tomorrow night, going to be in Berwick, Pennsylvania, with the cameras there to check out one of the early national powers. Yes, the Berwick Bulldogs. They were a powerhouse. USA Today has been putting out rankings since 1982, and Berwick won their second national mythical championship. That was back in 1983, and then they won two more after that back-to-back when Ron Paulus was there before he went on to Notre Dame. So 1983, 1992, and 1993, all big years for Berwick, and that's where high school football will be tomorrow night to look at the town. It's a tiny little town in the midsection of Pennsylvania. This is, let's see, week 7 of the regular season games. Hard to believe, but, just in 3 weeks, the postseason is going to begin in Alaska. It is just flying by. Plenty of games tonight, as there always are on Thursday nights, and highschoolfootballamerica.com there to get you all of your scores tonight and throughout the weekend. Just go to highschoolfootballamerica.com and click on the high school wire, and you'll have all the scores as they come in tonight. Remember, just keep up to date with everything that's going on from around the country as far as news is concerned. Just go to the wire there and click on it state by state. That's highschoolfootballamerica.com every day for all of your news. If you want to keep up with us on the social side of things, the social media side of things, you can follow High School Football America on Facebook and Twitter. Go to the website at the top of the page there. You will see the icons. You can click on them, and if you just like to search things, you can go to our Twitter handle, which is HSFB America. On Facebook, just plug in there High School Football America, and you'll be able to join the party that way. Now let's go on to who's on tonight's show. You may remember last week we had a guy that won his 400th game. That was Corky Rogers of the Bowles School. Well, one night after we talked to Corky, it happened again. Bob Paroli of 71st High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He did it, and he's going to join us tonight to talk about win number 400 as he became only the 9th coach in America to win that magical 400 games. Then we'll talk with Steve Spiewak of Max Preps. Always love to have Steve here. He will take a look at the chase for the mythical national championship through the first quarter of this season. Right now, on top of the stack, well, it is Don Bosco Prep, as they've picked up a couple of wins to open the season, but things are going to get really heated up here over the next couple of weeks. The big one tomorrow night, De La Salle from California taking on St. Thomas Aquinas from Florida, and we're going to have Steve talk about that, plus all of the other teams that have a shot at winning a national championship. Then we will wrap up, speaking of that St. Thomas Aquinas, De La Salle matchup, we'll wrap up with Ben Enos from the Mercury News in the Bay Area. He's actually in Fort Lauderdale for tomorrow's big game. That game will be starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, so you can check it out that way. But we'll have a little bit of a preview with Ben as he'll talk about it from the Spartans side of things. Don't forget, throughout the show, we're also going to keep you up to date with who had the big games last week as we check the stats courtesy of Max Preps and let you know who did some big things in big ball games. I want to thank our sponsors as we get things kicked off here tonight. Blitz Group, proud sponsor of High School Football America. Blitz Group handles all of our media strategy and gets all the information out there throughout the week. So for more information, you can go to their website at blitzgroupllc.com. The High School Rudy Awards. You may remember we had Byron Jensen, one of the awards directors, on the show last week, and they're always here to be a sponsor. The High School Rudy Awards honor inspirational high school football players who best define the 4 C's: character, courage, contribution, and commitment. Go to highschoolrudyawards.com to learn how to nominate a player, as nominations are open, and it's really a great website to learn a lot of wonderful things about wonderful players that aren't just necessarily the top quarterback or the top lineman. These are kids that are doing great things in the community. And we're also being sponsored tonight, as usual, by the National High School Coaches Association. Mission of the NHSCA: provide leadership and support to coaches, administrators, and their programs. For more information and learn how to become a member, please go to their website at nhsca.com. Don't forget, you can become a sponsor of High School Football America. All you have to do is write me at jeff@highschoolfootballamerica.com. I'll get you out a media kit, and we're going to get things started right away here as we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk with the man who became the 9th guy in American high school football history to win 400 games. His name is Bob Paroli of 71st High School in North Carolina, and we'll talk to Coach Paroli when we come back on High School Football America on the Artist First Radio Network.
You've heard of being named All-Conference, but only one organization has earned the classification of being All-World: the United States Navy. Whether it's humanitarian efforts, fighting terrorism, or protecting America's freedoms, the Navy is the team that helps us all win big. To learn how you could make it to the big league, call 1-800-USA-NAVY or visit Navy.com. Navy, accelerate your life.
If you don't clean up your room, the Board of Health is going to condemn it.
The Board of Health doesn't even know about your room. What's more, they don't care.
You know, if you keep making that face, it's going to freeze that way.
Not unless you're someplace really, really cold. Actually, a lot of the warnings moms hand out are exaggerated.
If you don't get your blood pressure checked, you could have high blood pressure, not even know it, and you could die from a stroke.
But she's right about that one. Call the American Heart Association or visit our website to learn more.
The hottest technology in the world isn't being developed in Silicon Valley. In the United States Navy, more top-secret technologies are being created than ever before. Incredible machines made of stealth materials that fly by themselves. The only problem with these incredible technologies? It's a shame the enemy can't see them. To learn more, call 1-800-USA-NAVY or visit Navy.com. Navy, accelerate your life.
And now back to High School Football America with your host, Jeff Fisher.
Thank you very much, Corey. Coming to you from Times Square in New York City tonight as we head to Berwick, Pennsylvania tomorrow night on High School Football America to capture that little tiny town in Pennsylvania. Head on the show tonight, we're going to talk with Steve Spiewak of Max Preps. He's going to talk about the chase for the national championship. We're also going to talk with Ben Enos from the Mercury News in the Bay Area. He is in Fort Lauderdale to talk about that big game between De La Salle and St. Thomas Aquinas. But right now we're going to, maybe I should start calling High School Football America the 400 Club, because if you remember, last week we talked with Corky Rogers of the Bowl School. He became the 8th man in American high school football history to win 400 games. And lo and behold, you know, one day after I talked to Corky, well, another guy did it. His name is Bob Paroli. He's at 71st High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And Coach Paroli joins me right now to talk about that huge milestone last week. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Just, you know, it's odd that you can have two guys do the same thing in back-to-back weeks, but really enjoy it. And you did it last week with a 24-14 win over E.E. Smith to get to number 400. And I know you're going to downplay this probably just like Corky did, but now that you've had a week to digest it, truly, what does that 400 win mean to you?
Well, you're absolutely right. It doesn't register with you right away, and it's not your primary concern. But when you've had time to sit back and look at it, our entire family is proud of what has happened, and the fact that the Lord has let me stay healthy enough to keep doing what we've been doing and win 400 games and be one of only 2 coaches in the history of the state to do that. It is a great thing to have happen, and couldn't be really happy now that it's over with and not have to answer all the questions from the news media. But there's a great sense of satisfaction. But that being said, you can't forget the kids that played for you down through the years and great coaches that you were privileged to work with. And all those people told one of our kids, and I still call him a kid, was on our 77 team that went 10-0. And I told him, I said, you realize, as he was here Friday night, I said, you realize if you guys don't win 10 and 77, we're still at 390. So all those young people are responsible for it going all the way back to 1958. and especially to the coaches that have just been tremendous to work with.
Now, you mentioned family, and your son Mike is an assistant there. He's been there for 28 years with you. Tell me a little bit about what that was like to celebrate with your son. And again, you mentioned all your assistants, but what was it really like to have your son there by your side?
Well, it's been one of God's great blessings to be able to get up every day and come to work and see him and his family. Of course, he has 2 children, and we get to see them quite often, especially on Sundays. And it's been a thrill. He's kept me in it. I retired from full-time teaching in '96, and been working part-time with full-time coaching. And so he's kept me in it. I probably would have stepped aside had it not been for him, and he passed up a lot of good head coaching positions, and I really think that he and his older brother are afraid I might die if I don't go to practice every day. But it's just been a thrill to have him, and he's not because he's a Paroli, but he's bright and perceptive, and right now it does pretty much, he's taking a load off of his old man, and does a great deal of work that I don't have to concern myself with now. But a great thrill to have him. I mean, it's we get along well together. I play the devil's advocate, and I make him mad from time to time, and but that's okay.
That's a father's right?
Well, sometimes I am, but he's a great young person. I say young, but he just has a great work ethic, and everyone who is around him had better absorb the work ethic, or they're not going to be around for very long. And that's the way it has to be, to do the things that we do as coaches. And I'm not speaking only of us, but all the coaches that do what we do, work so hard at what we do. Then everybody that's involved in it has to share in that mentality.
We're talking with Bob Paroli tonight on High School Football America, head coach at 71st High School in North Carolina. Won his 400th game last Friday, becoming only the 9th man in 136 years of high school football to reach that milestone. That's quite a mark. And just kind of talking about what it's been like over the course of the last 54 years. And that takes me to my next question, which is, what's it like, 54 years later when you look back? I mean, what are some of the things that stand out in your mind about how the sport has changed specifically?
Well, I think our young people today carry so much more baggage than what they carried 50 years ago. Most families were nuclear. You had a mom and dad at home. In a lot of instances, our kids today have a one-parent home that they're living in, and that parent is busting his or her fanny to make certain that her children or his children and get to school and get an education and get to the next level. And so I think it falls on us as coaches. And again, I include all of my brothers that are in the profession, that I think that we today have to deal with more concerns with our kids than we did 50 years ago. And we have to be there for them. And if they have a problem, in their private lives or in their academic lives or in their family lives, then it's incumbent on us to be there for them and to deal with it. So a great example of what I'm trying to say, I had a ninth grader in health class in 1959, and she asked me, Coach Paroli, should I kiss my boyfriend on the first date? And obviously, with the music and the television and all the other things that they have to deal with, we're no longer worried about kissing on the first date. So yes, things have changed. The kids really haven't changed. The kids, even though they kick against the goad when it comes to the discipline that's required of them to do the things that have to be done to be successful, they still want it. I'm convinced that young people do what they do because they love it, and they're willing to submit to the discipline, come to school, go to class, behave yourselves, and graduate from high school and go to the next level, whatever that level might be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we ask of our kids, and that's all that they have to do for us. But if they do those kinds of things, then we don't worry about where they are 5 years down the road when they leave us.
Let's educate our listeners around the nation on 71st High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. What type of town is it? What type of school is it?
Well, Fort Bragg is here. Fort Bragg is the home of the 82nd Airborne and headquarters for 18th Airborne Corps, and has now become the headquarters for command out of Atlanta. So I think we have 10 high schools in the county, and I think all of us have a number of military families. We have more retired now than we have active. The active duty people are living in other parts of adjoining counties, Hope County and Harney County, where the taxes are less. But it's a great town. When I was a vagabond, when we came here in 1980 and told my wife, don't unpack all the boxes, and bless her heart, she's a coach's wife, because in 4 years we'll be out of here. We stayed 4 years, 5 years in most places, but the longer we stayed, the more we fell in love with the community and the people. And this county has the greatest people for high school football that anywhere I've ever been, and by the grace of God, we've been successful in the county, and people appreciate what we do, and have no hesitation of telling you in the grocery store, in the drugstore, or in the mall, if someone sees you and recognizes you, and I say you, I'm talking about the other 9 coaches in the county, they acknowledge the fact that we're football coaches, and they thank us for the things that we do for the young people in Cumberland County. And that it's a great place to live. The only thing we just stress over, I'm from New York originally, and it snowed up in the upstate New York, up in the Hudson Valley and Poughkeepsie, and so we do snow dances all winter long. And it seems like there's a canopy over Fayetteville, because if it does snow, it snows all around us. It doesn't snow in Fayetteville. But it's a great place to live.
Well, I'll put in an order here, since I'm sitting in Times Square right now, really literally overlooking Times Square. I'll put in an order for some snow for you coming up this year.
Appreciate that.
Sure, and a couple of quick questions as we get away here. Tell me, I know it's really hard to do, and I'm sure you've been asked this question before, and you don't want to offend any team or any player, but is there a favorite team you've had over the course of 400 victories that stands out in your mind?
Well, there is. There's so many. We had a great run back in the 90s, from 91 through, I guess. Well, we played for 6 consecutive Eastern Championships and played for 4 state championships out of those 6 back in the 90s. And you could say any one of those teams. But then we had a football team back in '83 where 4 of them went to the NFL. And so you would have to say, well, talent-wise, that was the best football team we coached. Mm-hmm. But then again, we had a running back from 93 through 95 who ran for 6,500 yards and scored 75 touchdowns, and he made us. Of course, we had other great football players that went on to the next level, but he made those football teams something special. So I think all of them are special. I coached the football team in 1960. We moved up into a new league, and we went 1-8-1. But those kids never quit, never gave up the battle. And at the end of the season, we tied the conference champion 13-13, and only because they would not show any quit. And I still see those young people, young. I guess they're in their 60s now. But I still went to a reunion back in May, the 60th reunion of the class, 50th reunion of the class of 1961. and we had a great time reminiscing about when they played high school football, and reminisced about that in that season, because they did great things for us, and they left their heart and souls on the game field when it was over with. That's all you can ask of. So to say there's any one particular football team that is a favorite, we've had several good ones down through the years, and some great ones. And so I would hesitate saying that one was any better than the other.
Well, a good head coach has to be a politician, too, so I think you handled that question real well. Now the one that I always have to ask when you get some old sages on the line here that have been doing it for a long time. I talked to John McKissick in South Carolina several weeks ago. You know, he's 85 years young, so the question is 54 seasons coming up here in the books at the end of this year. How much longer are you going to keep doing this?
Well, Coach McKissick has got an edge on me age-wise. I'm much younger than he is. I was 80 in June. I will do it, in answer to your question, I would do it as long as Michael, our son, is willing to do it. At the end of this year, he'll have 29 years in education. He, with a sick leave, could retire next June if he wanted to, and I would encourage him not to, because he's too good at what he does. But for as long as he stays in it, then I will stay with him and coach with him. And our agreement is that when he takes a head job, and he goes as a head coach, I go as his assistant coach. So I will step down one of these days.
Wow.
But right now, we just want to get through this season and do what we do every year. I sit down. I have 3 grown children and my wife of 58 years, and so we'll sit down and talk about what the future holds for us and what we're going to do with our lives.
Well, you know, it sounds like a pretty darn good plan, and we can see why you've made it through 54 years. And you're right, your wife deserves a whole lot of credit too, because a lot of time away from the family. But Coach Paroli, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk to America, and congratulations on the victory, and many, many, many more victories down the road for you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. That is Bob Paroli, the head coach at 71st High School, the 9th man in America to win 400 games. He is the second winningest coach in the state of North Carolina. Jack Holley, the winningest coach with 410, and wouldn't be surprised. Coach Bob continues to roll toward that number and goes past it. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the national championship chase with Steve Spiewak of Max Preps. That's when High School Football America returns on the Artist First Radio Network.
The hottest technology in the world isn't being developed in Silicon Valley. In the United States Navy, more top-secret technologies are being created than ever before. Incredible machines made of stealth materials that fly by themselves. The only problem with these incredible technologies? It's a shame the enemy can't see them. To learn more, call 1-800-USA-NAVY or visit Navy.com. Navy, accelerate your life. The Navy Seahawk helicopter has a lift capacity of over 6,000 pounds. But when it comes to helping those around the world who need it most, they lift the hopes of millions. To learn more about how the Navy is the best place to do great things, call 1-800-USA-NAVY or visit Navy.com. It will do you and the world a load of good. Navy, accelerate your life.
The major record labels say that downloading music from the internet is stealing. But according to these people, making a mixtape for your friend is stealing too. So is making a tape of a radio show.
Clone Radio. We play the songs that sound more like everyone else than anyone else.
When a rock band plays an AC/DC cover at a bar that doesn't pay ASCAP, that's stealing. Or have you ever sung Happy Birthday to your friend at a restaurant?
Warning!
Happy Birthday is copyrighted, so if you're singing in a public place, you'd better be paying royalties, or you'll be stealing music.
Man down!
Does all this stuff about stealing music sound absurd? Would you rather have a world where our music culture wasn't the intellectual property of 5 corporations? Then stop giving them your money, and make sure your friends and family don't either. Better yet, try burning them a CD. If we pull the plug on major labels, music gets better. Find out more about what you can do. Check out downhillbattle.org.
And now back to High School Football America.
Thank you very much, Corey. Coming to you from New York City tonight, High School Football America, traveling the country throughout the fall and making a stop in Pennsylvania tomorrow. I want to thank Coach Bob Paroli of 71st High School, who just joined us a little while ago on his 400th victory, the 9th man in America to reach that milestone. And amazing. We've had so many great coaches on this year, John McKissick at Somerville in South Carolina and J.T. Curtis. And kind of the thread throughout that is, just the give back to the kids. They truly love it. I mean, when you're 80 years young, you have to be in it for a reason, and they obviously love giving back to the kids. Now time to talk a little national championship, the mythical national championship with a good friend of mine, Steve Spiewak from Max Preps, who always does a great job. And Steve, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure, Jeff. Appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you. And maybe before we even roll into St. Thomas Aquinas and De La Salle, let's talk a little bit about the fact that over the last 2 weeks we've had two coaches in America, Corky Rogers and Bob Paroli, reach that 400-win mark, and the fact that we do have so many older sages, if you will, still roaming the sidelines. What's your take on that? Why we've got so many of these great older guys still giving back?
It always just impresses me and amazes me to see people who are so dedicated to their community. And those guys that have won 400 games, most of them have been at the same school or have been at, 2 schools or maybe 3 schools for most of their career. And so they're really more than coaches in those communities. They are huge public figures in a lot of those places. And, what really strikes me is how they still have a hunger to succeed and to shape young athletes, and that it doesn't get old after 300 wins. You know what I mean? It's pretty amazing how they keep coming back fall after fall.
It really is, and I think if the presidential election was held in any of those small, tiny little towns, they could run America. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about what could have been a pretty big matchup between two legendary coaches coming up tomorrow night in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as number 10 in Max Preps polls. De La Salle travels from California to take on St. Thomas Aquinas, number 4 this week. It could have been a George Smith versus Bob Lattiser, but instead we got Rocco Casullo taking over the reins at St. Thomas. But let's kind of break it down for the listeners. How do you view this one as we kind of on the eve, about 24 hours away from it?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point about the coaching. That's kind of the first thing. Rocco Casullo is in his first year at St. Thomas Aquinas, and his first game was actually against Prattville, which was kind of a baptism by fire. But they did well. They are 2-0. They're looking strong, and I really think they're probably the favorite in this contest. Heading into the season, I kind of figured De La Salle would take this one, but it should be a good game. It'll probably be a low-scoring game. I think both teams offensively have struggled at different points in this season. But it's a really exciting game. It's a matchup of two powers that have kind of built themselves up independently on two totally different parts of the country. The real interesting thing will be the quarterback play. Bart Houston from De La Salle has actually had a rough 2 games. He's one of the best quarterbacks the program has had in recent years, but he struggled in the first 2 games of his senior season, so a lot will depend on if he can finally get into a rhythm. And St. Thomas Aquinas quarterback Max Loscano is not really the type of playmaker they've had the last couple years, so it's going to be interesting. The defensive lines on both teams should be solid. Aquinas' front 7 is extremely strong, and De La Salle's linebackers are exceptional. So a lot of interesting matchups to watch, and this should be just an outstanding game and a very well-coached game.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. How surprised were you that Coach Smith stepped down earlier this year? It was kind of the timing was right around the same time that it was announced that they were going to have this big national matchup.
Yeah, when I heard about it, I was very surprised. I'd not heard any rumblings or any rumors about it. People I talked to close to the situation also seemed a little surprised. But, it did seem like it was also it made sense as a time for Rocco to kind of step up. He'd put his time in the program. Everyone there seems impressed with him, and they're fully behind him. It wasn't a controversial, are we going to support him or are we going to, try to lobby for someone else? It seems like everyone there is kind of behind Coach Casullo, and so, it was surprising, but it seems like it made sense for them, and it seems like the timing worked out pretty well, at least so far.
Now let's talk about the national championship chase. Again, if STA gets a win tomorrow night, puts them at 3-0, a couple of quality wins over, as you said, nationally ranked Prattville and then De La Salle. Let's kind of talk about some of the other teams. Don Bosco gets a later start, but came out of the box with an impressive victory over Mission Viejo. I know we talked about them earlier this year. It doesn't look like the Ironmen are going to disappoint anybody. What's your take on it?
Yeah, they are 2-0 on paper. 2-0, a win against one of the top Southern California teams and a win against the top Florida team. They didn't quite look as strong as I think some people expected them to look against Manatee down in Florida. So I think the rest of the season they are really going to play with a chip on their shoulders, even as number one, because I think they feel like people in Florida still kind of, Don Bosco didn't come and beat Manatee by 30 points. Everyone's saying they're number one. But a lot of people don't realize when you get two outstanding teams, two outstanding coaches and programs together, you rarely see a blowout. I will be shocked tomorrow night if one team blows out another team when it's Aquinas versus De La Salle. So Don Bosco Prep is definitely still in the national title hunt. They're at number one, and they have a big game against St. Edward out of Cleveland coming up in a couple weeks, and that'll be another very telling game for them.
Had Bob Beatty from Trinity out of Louisville on the show last week and talking about his, rugged schedule. No cupcakes on that one. They beat St. X last week, 17-7. They're all the way up to number 3 in your poll there. So tell me a little bit about their opportunity to possibly climb to the top.
Yeah, they're definitely a team that has a strong chance to finish number one. They've just been so dominant this season against a very good schedule. I thought they would be good this year. I didn't realize they would be this good. Their offense has been very explosive. They've hung 50 points, I think, their first 3 or 4 games. They beat a good St. X team on the road. Their defense has also been very impressive. They are a very, very balanced team. They've beaten some very good competition, and they have a couple more tests on their schedule. They're not out of the woods yet, but by all indications, this is one of the better teams to come out of Kentucky in a very long time.
Talking with Steve Spiewak of Max Preps about the national chase tonight, and I read with a lot of enthusiasm the little article that you guys had up this week, which puts Prep and Trinity together. Greg Toll and Bob Beatty, and looking at the national rankings. I know you didn't write the story, but it was an interesting take. Two men on how they look at things. You got any reaction to that story?
Well, I've always been pretty surprised at how outspoken or how honest Coach Beatty has been about his feelings on national rankings and his willingness to mention another school by name. That's not something you often see in high school sports, and for him to mention, a school in particular and to mention Don Bosco no less was really interesting. So it was kind of cool for us to dig into that a little bit and to kind of dig into the rationale behind that and both their feelings on the topic. But what it boils down to is there is no perfect system for national rankings. We do the best we can. We have fun with it. And at the end of the season, it usually kind of works itself out. But I still think the ultimate goal for high school football teams is the state title. So I think that's what everyone kind of shoots for. And then the national rankings are just kind of the icing on the cake after that.
Yeah, we always have some fun with that. Another team that's setting up there with a good shot is Allen out of Texas, and I think I mistakenly said that Aquinas was number 5 this week, but Allen sits in at number 4. So tell us a little bit about the Eagles.
Yeah, Allen looks just extremely impressive. They beat Longview, a very good team. They are probably the best team in Texas. We have them ranked that way. They're extremely sound on defense as well. They're going to be tested, so if they finish the season undefeated, they will have beaten a number of very strong teams and will have a number of very solid wins on their belt, on their resume. So that's a team that is definitely in the hunt for number one. The team that's kind of come out of nowhere, though, from Texas is DeSoto. They lost their quarterback last year, Ryan Polite, who I think started basically 4 years for them. They replaced him with a guy, Raheem Wilson, and he hasn't missed a beat, and they have a lot of key players on defense back and a lot of talent on defense. And the rub on DeSoto has been they can score a ton of points, but their defense will allow just as many points. But this year, that is definitely not the case. They beat a Stony Point team that is a very good team. They beat them 42-7. And so this DeSoto team looks like it could be for real. And this could end up being the best team in Texas this year. And if that's the case, potentially the best team in the country as well.
Yeah, they're ranked number 6 this week, and you're excellent 25. Katy right behind them, another Texas team at 7. Speaking of a team that's coming out of nowhere, although the program is very good, sitting at number 8 is Gaffney out of South Carolina.
Yeah, that's another team that, we thought they would be good. We didn't think they would be this good. They beat Burns, they beat Dorman, Greenwood. They beat a number of very good South Carolina teams, and they beat them convincingly. This is not a team that's winning on last-minute field goals and kind of scraping by every Friday night. This is a team that is really looking impressive, and that factors into it. Sometimes you think, okay, you just win, that's good enough, but when you come out and you beat a program like the caliber of Burns and you beat them in the fashion that Gaffney did, that really says a lot about the type of team that you have. And so Gaffney is another team that, if they continue this dominant streak, could end up near the top of the rankings.
So let's just play the what-if game. What if someone gets to Bosco and they fall down? Who do you think out of all the teams right now, let's just say in the top 10 or top 15, if Bosco stumbles, who has the legitimate shot if they can run the table to go right to the top at the end of the year? They have no pressure.
I think it could be Aquinas again. It very well could be Aquinas. They've been there before. They may finish number 1 even if Don Bosco doesn't lose. A win against De La Salle and a run through the Florida playoffs really would be impressive. But those other schools that are up there, certainly have just as good a shot too. So that's the fun of it. We'll see how they do in their state playoffs and then go from there.
And one last time, who do you like in tomorrow night's game? In Florida?
I'll take Aquinas by 3 or 4 points.
Take it, mark it down. There you go. Steve Spiewak from Max Prep. Steve, always appreciate your stuff. Check Steve out every week at maxpreps.com. You do a great job, and thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yep, take care. Have a good week.
You as well.
And that is Steve Spiewak. And when we return, we're going to take a look at some of the numbers as reported in Max Prep, some of the great players from last week. There's some great numbers up there. That and more when we come back. This is High School Football America on the Artist First Radio Network.
The major record labels say that downloading music from the internet is stealing. But according to these people, making a mixtape for your friend is stealing too. So is making a tape of a radio show.
Clone Radio. We play the songs that sound more like everyone else than anyone else.
When a rock band plays an AC/DC cover at a bar that doesn't pay ASCAP, that's stealing. Or have you ever sung Happy Birthday to your friend at a restaurant?
Warning!
Happy Birthday is copyrighted, so if you're singing in a public place, you'd better be paying royalties, or you'll be stealing music.
Man down!
Does all this stuff about stealing music sound absurd? Would you rather have a world where our music culture wasn't the intellectual property of 5 corporations? Then stop giving them your money, and make sure your friends and family don't either. Better yet, try burning them a CD. If we pull the plug on major labels, music gets better. Find out more about what you can do. Check out downhillbattle.org.
And now your host, Jeff Fisher.
Thank you very much, Corey. Welcome back to High School Football America, coming to you from Times Square in New York City this evening. Just heard from Steve Spiewak from Max Preps about the national chase and a look at what's ahead tomorrow night on ESPN2 when De La Salle takes on St. Thomas Aquinas in a big battle, Florida versus California. And as you heard Steve say, if things go right for St. Thomas Aquinas, they get another big win. They've already beaten Prattville. They stand a good chance at maybe winning their 3rd national championship. Let's, courtesy of Max Preps, take a look at some of the great performances last week, and there were some really great passing performances, but nothing better than Tanner Trozen of Folsom, California. 34 of 49 for 601 yards and 5 touchdowns to lead Folsom to a 49-46 win over Deer Valley. There were then, let's see here, 5 players above the 500-yard mark, starting with Nick McCarty of Calvary Baptist Academy in Shreveport, Louisiana. Blake Gimbel of Marshalltown in Iowa threw for 567 yards. Emin Westmoreland of Central Gwinnett in Georgia, big night with 566 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then there was Caleb Upton of Cathedral in Natchez, Mississippi, threw 5 touchdown passes and 532 yards. And R.J. Knoll of Lowell, Massachusetts, 519 yards on 34 of 63, 5 touchdowns in a 44-41 loss to Nashua South. So all those stats courtesy of Max Preps as reported to them. And a little bit later on in the show, we'll take a look at some of the rushing statistics and some of the receiving yards. Some big weeks put up there, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. Also, want to mention down in Florida this week, former NFL player Keith Byers on the hot seat at Boca Raton High School. One of the reports in one of the papers down there stating that Byers going to be reprimanded and possibly later on tonight lose his job for allegedly shoving a player during Friday's game against Jupiter. Byers, you may remember, was an All-American at Ohio State, played in the NFL with 4 teams in 13 years. This is his 3rd year with the program. He's 14-11 through last Friday night's loss to Jupiter. So keep with highschoolfootballamerica.com. As soon as the word comes down, we will have what's happening there. But never like to see that. I had an opportunity to talk with Keith and cover Keith when he was with the Eagles, stand-up guy, but obviously something went wrong Friday night, and now there's going to be maybe some something to be paid for what happened as he goes on the hot seat at Boca Raton High School. Going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go in-depth to the St. Thomas Aquinas de La Salle matchup as we speak with Ben Enos of the Mercury News out in the Bay Area. He is in Fort Lauderdale. He's traveled with the team, and we're going to take an in-depth look at what the Spartans are doing and what the scene is down in Florida as they get ready for their big ESPN2 matchup, 8 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow night. Talking to Ben Enos. When we come back, this is High School Football America. You can catch everything right here on the Artist First Radio Network.
You've heard of being named All-Conference, but only one organization has earned the classification of being All-World: the United States Navy. Whether it's humanitarian efforts, fighting terrorism, or protecting America's freedoms, the Navy is the team that helps us all win big. To learn how you could make it to the big league, call 1-800-USA-NAVY or visit Navy.com. Navy, accelerate your life.
If you don't clean up your room, the Board of Health is going to condemn it.
The Board of Health doesn't even know about your room. What's more, they don't care.
You know, if you keep making that face, it's going to freeze that way.
Not unless you're someplace really, really cold. Actually, a lot of the warnings moms hand out are exaggerated.
If you don't get your blood pressure checked, you could have high blood pressure, not even know it, and you could die from a stroke.
But she's right about that one. Call the American Heart Association or visit our website to learn more.
And now back to the show with your host, Jeff Fisher.
Thank you very much, Corey. Welcome back to High School Football America. Tonight, already spoken with Bob Paroli at 71st High School in North Carolina on his 400th victory last week, becoming the 9th coach in American high school football history to reach the 400 mark. And then a few moments ago, we spoke with Steve Spiewak, national senior writer for Max Preps, about the national chase, and he gave you his opinion from what tomorrow night's De La Salle St. Thomas Aquinas matchup's going to do in the chase for the national championship. But now we're going to bring in a guy here that's going to break it down from the Spartan standpoint. He's actually in Fort Lauderdale with the team getting ready for tomorrow night's matchup on ESPN2. His name is Ben Enos from the Mercury News out in the Bay Area. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
Very, very good. Excited to watch this one tomorrow night. Steve Spiewak and I were just talking. I think this is one of these games that should live up to the hype. No blowout possibly coming down in this one. It should be a good one from start to finish. So let's just talk a little bit about what the scene is down there. When did you get there? And I know you've been around checking out the practices. So what's it like 24 hours away from this one?
I spent Tuesday afternoon out at De La Salle doing some interviews. Came down yesterday. Got my footing, and then today spent a good portion of the afternoon out at Aquinas, and they're getting ready. The TV trucks are there, the banners are up, the school seems pumped. It's just an impressive. We had an opportunity to watch the beginning of practice today, and you get out there and you see the size of some of those kids, and you see the paces that they're being put through. There is no way that either of these teams come unprepared tomorrow night. Knowing De La Salle as I do and seeing what I saw today, these are two of the nation's absolute best high school football teams. I don't see any way in which people walk away disappointed tomorrow night.
So you, like you said, De La Salle very, very well. So let's talk about it. They've played big games. They've been on that national stage. They've got the 151-game win streak and all that. Put it into perspective for the listeners as to where this game ranks coming into it as far as what you can tell from Coach Ladouceur on down through the players.
It's funny. Some of the early games, some of the early big-name games, the games against guys like Long Beach Poly and St. Louis and Honolulu, and even later games like Elder when they played in the Herb Street, those were kind of landmark games because teams at that time weren't really traveling the distances that De La Salle was traveling. Now, this is kind of an old hat situation for them, and Aquinas too. Both these teams are very well-versed in big matchups on the road. Just based on the rankings, though, I mean, you have to think that the Long Beach Poly game a few years back when they were ranked 1 and 2 in the country probably is near the top of that list, and the various games they played against Mater Dei of Santa Ana is up near the top of that list. This has the potential to be up there, though. I mean, this is a cross-country trip, and De La Salle, let's face it, hasn't played a Florida team before, and we saw a couple of years ago they played New Jersey's best when they played Don Bosco, and they played one game extremely tough, and then the second game in New Jersey it didn't go quite as well for the Spartans. I'm interested to see how they stack up against Florida talent because there's plenty of it on that. There was plenty of it on that field at practice today, and it has the potential to be one of those games, one of those ones that you really remember for the Spartans.
Now, you said you were out of practice on Tuesday, so tell us a little bit about the mood of the players that you witnessed there. I mean, you talked about what you saw today with St. Thomas Aquinas. What was the feel before they hopped on the plane?
They were very, very focused. They have the ability at De La Salle, when they have a big game coming up, they can hone in on one task better than any team I've ever seen, and that's a credit to the coaching staff. Coach Ladouceur and his assistants get this team very, very focused, and that's what we saw on Tuesday. I mean, they were going through their drills and doing everything that they normally do, but there was a certain pace and a certain intensity about it that you just associate with big-time high school football, and that's what they looked like on Tuesday. They looked ready to play a big national contest.
Now, anybody that starts 2-0, it's a good start to the season, but not if you're De La Salle and you had a tough win in overtime to start the season. Everybody's kind of saying, a slow start. So have you been at the first two games, and what's your take on the start to the Spartans?
That first game was a little hairy for the Spartans. There's no denying it, and they did get lucky. They will tell you that. Anytime you rely on the opposition's kicker to miss a PAT to extend it to a second overtime, you got lucky. And they know they did not play well. Basically, their linebackers have been very solid throughout both of the first two games. Where the improvement came in the second game was on offense. They were able to control the ball. In the first game against Bellarmine, they gave the ball back to Bellarmine way too often in the first half, and with the wing T offense that the Bells ran, they were able to play keep away, and it kept De La Salle's offense off the field. In the second week, they didn't do that. They didn't give the ball away, and they made some plays on offense. They established the running game, which they always try and do, and the offense rolled a little more smoothly to the tune of 35 points. That first game, though, there were a lot of kinks to work out, and there still are a lot of kinks to work out. I think we are anxious to see, just from covering the team and following the team, how quarterback Bart Houston plays. I mean, it's a question mark because he's got a big arm, he's very talented, but he's been pressing a little in the first 2 weeks. He'll tell you that. The coaching staff will tell you that. He's been trying to do a little too much, and if he can play within himself tomorrow, he's going to go a long way to making that offense better. So there are still question marks, but generally they did show a good amount of improvement from week 1 to week 2. If they continue that trend, they should be right in it tomorrow.
Houston is, 6'3", 200 pounds, committed to Wisconsin and all that. I think I read, and I don't know if it was in your story or a couple that I read, that his quarterback rating has been at 39, and they haven't really been able to put their finger on what the sluggishness is there. Any take on that? It's
just, I think, honestly, he is the senior leader of this team. For 2 years, consider that he's coming into this game with a 27-0 record as a varsity starting quarterback. The last game De La Salle lost was against Lakeland of this very Florida, the game before Houston became the full-time starter for the Spartans. So, the record speaks for itself, but the first 2 games, he's tried to fill that senior leadership role. And Coach Ladouceur told us on Tuesday when he talked to reporters that, he thinks he's just worrying a little too much about the other facets of the game. He just needs to just kind of slow down and worry about being the quarterback and making the plays and running the offense. And so if he can hone in on that this week, I think we've seen the talent. He's very talented. And he's a very good quarterback, a very good leader. For 2 years, he's managed the offense very well. This year, they're asking him to be a playmaker. And so far, he's pressed that role a little bit. So if he settles down tomorrow, I think he's in line to have a pretty good game. I would expect him to improve.
Talking De La Salle, St. Thomas Aquinas tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN2 with Ben Enos of the Mercury News out in the Bay Area. So who are some of the other players? We talked about Houston and his role, but who are some of the other players that the listeners should be kind of honing in on tomorrow night as far as the Spartans' top players?
Well, you're going to hear 2 names on offense a lot. Well, let's make it 3. The 2 running backs this year who are looking to step in for a very successful back last year, Lucas, are Pepe Vitali and Desmond Tautalatasi. Tautalatasi is a sophomore. I believe Vitali's a junior. And they're filling big shoes because De La Salle runs a modified veer offense, and they will run the ball constantly. The one outlier to that is Anthony Williams, the wide receiver, who's a half-brother to former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Demetrius Williams. He's a big-time playmaker on both sides of the ball. He plays a little safety and a little corner for the Spartans on defense. Also on defense, you got to look up front. Justin Walker, the defensive tackle, is a returning state placer in wrestling. Very talented athlete and football player. And their linebacking core led by Michael Barton, who is going to Cal next year, and Michael Hutchings, who, as a junior, has already gotten scholarship offers from the likes of Miami, Michigan, Tennessee, or virtually the entire Pac-12. He's going to be a talent to watch for the next 2 years, but their defensive leader and their defensive captain is definitely Barton, the middle linebacker, who, like I said, will play at Cal next year, but is really a big-time playmaker. He makes everyone around him much, much better. And the final guy I would throw in there would be their fellow linebacker, David Moffitt, he returned an interception for a touchdown last week, played great against Bellarmine. He's really been the surprise in the first 2 weeks. So defensively, they're a little further along than they were. We'll see how it goes tomorrow night against a team with the talent that Aquinas has.
Let me ask you a personal question. Normally during the season, obviously, as a reporter there, you've got to balance yourself off. You can't root for one team versus the other. But in this case, we got California versus Florida. Are you pumped for this from a sports writer standpoint to kind of, win one for California, if you will?
I've never been to Florida, and just, you would think that would be the inclination. But having spent the day at Aquinas today and meeting just such good people, we had such nice conversations with George Smith, the athletic director, who was the head coach for 34 years, and Coach Casulo. They treated us so well, and the courtesies that we were extended at Aquinas, from a journalist standpoint, it makes it very easy to be objective tomorrow night, because no matter who wins, I like both sides. They've been very good to me, so I wouldn't begrudge either team for pulling them off. I just want to see a good high school football game.
And I agree with you on that. So before I let you go here, I gotta have you whip out that crystal ball. So who do you like?
Earlier this week I went, and I haven't caught much flack for it yet, but I did earlier this week predict that Aquinas would win by a field goal. So I won't go back on that now. I think the talent and the home field advantage is a big deal. I think De La Salle will be right in it. I've been made a fool before. When I started working in the Bay Area on high school sports, I picked against De La Salle, and they railroaded a team. So I vowed never to do it again. Here I am doing it again. But, some things you just never learn. So I think that's the way it goes. But, man, if there's any team that could ever do this cross-country trip and beat a talented team from Florida, it's De La Salle. There's no question about that.
You walk the line very well there, and let's face it, as journalists, none of us are really all that bright. So It's not the first time and the last time, right?
No, not at all.
Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time here and filling in our listeners from the Spartan standpoint on what the game looks like as it shapes up, and enjoy it. I'm with you. I'd love to see a great ball game tomorrow that comes down to the end.
I agree. Thanks for having me.
Yep, take care. That's Ben Enos of the Mercury News out in the Bay Area talking about tomorrow night's big matchup on ESPN2. De La Salle ranked number 10 by Max Preps. St. Thomas Aquinas coming in number 5. Just two big programs. St. Thomas Aquinas has won 2 mythical national championships. De La Salle has had 7 of them. So it's going to be a great matchup. I kind of agree. You heard Steve Spiewak from Max Preps say the same thing. You know, it's going to come down maybe a field goal with St. Thomas Aquinas being just a little bit better, and maybe that's only because of the home field advantage. So great show here on High School Football America tonight. Before we go away, I want to just take a real quick look at some of the other stars. We talked about the passing stars for Max Preps. How about Baltimore Ravens' Ray Lewis, his son, Ray Lewis III, making a big mark on the offensive side of things with Lake Mary Prep in Maryland. One of the top performances in the country last week, 27 carries for 384 yards and 5 touchdowns, and win over Foundation Academy. They won 60-36. So obviously, Dad's got the defensive prowess, but son there knows how to carry the football. The big guy last week with the most yardage was Brian Kimbrough out of Memphis East in Tennessee. 21 carries, 441 yards, and 3 touchdowns in a win over Hamilton. So a big game for Brian. And again, you can go to maxpreps.com to check out all of the stars, guys that had the big games. Justin Saulmiller of Kenton High School. We talked to Matty Malk, if you remember, on the first show of the year back in July. Matty going to break all kinds of records, including his son. Let's get it right. His brother's record for all-time passing yardage. But Justin Saulmiller was on the receiving end of Matty Malk's 17 catches last week, 229 yards and 1 touchdown in a 34-7 win over Shawnee. Troy Knox came up with 14 catches for 248 yards, 1 touchdown in a 49-46 win over Deer Valley. Well, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank our guest on the show tonight. Just heard from Ben Enos from the Mercury News out in the Bay Area talking about St. Thomas Aquinas and De La Salle. We also heard from Steve Spiewak of Max Preps. Go to maxpreps.com for all your high school football news. And then at the top of the show, congratulations once again to Bob Paroli of 71st High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He won his 400th game last week, and Bob really kind of shed some light on what's changed in 54 years as a head coach at the high school level. And just congratulations to him as he becomes the 9th man in America to do it, following up on Corky Rogers, who did it a week ago. If you missed that interview with Corky Rogers, it's posted in the archives. Go to artistfirst.com and then click on High School Football America, and you can listen to those shows. I want to thank our sponsors tonight, Blitz Group. Go to blitzgroupllc.com, the High School Rudy Awards at highschoolrudyawards.com, and the National High School Coaches Association. Go to nhsca.com to learn how to become a member and learn more about the organization. As far as I'm concerned, I need to, I put everybody else on the spot as to who I wanted them to say was going to win or lose, so I'm going to have to do the same thing to myself. I think it's going to be a big game tomorrow night. I agree with Steve Spiewak. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, and I do see St. Thomas Aquinas coming out on top. It's not going to be more than a touchdown in my estimation, so tune into ESPN2 tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, to see who wins. I want to thank Corey back in Ohio for producing this one. Going to hit the road now, leave New York City, and head to Berwick, Pennsylvania. Going to have a great video on them that you can check out on highschoolfootballamerica.com next week. Don't forget to check the scoreboards tonight at highschoolfootballamerica.com. We'll also be up on Twitter and Facebook. And that's going to do it for me from New York City. This has been High School Football America on the Artist First Radio Network. Talk to you next week.
You put your keys between your knuckles.